Hey everybody, it's the wonderful Monday morning. I know that everybody's kind of getting up and getting their week started, but today we're going to be talking about 10 things that you have to have in your assignment contract. If you look at your assignment contract almost as a loan, that's how I consider it. Because if I go out there and I do a bunch of work and I pull down a solid deal and I know that I'm about to make $20,000 on this assignment contract and I use that assignment contract to assign that contract to someone else, that's essentially me loaning somebody 20 grand saying, I know you haven't given me 20 grand yet, but I anticipate you're going to give me 20 grand here in the near future. So if you look at your assignment of contract as a piece of paper that is that important, how often would you just loan somebody 20 grand on just some, Google Doc that you just printed off of the internet? So we're going to go through some of the primary things you need in that assignment of contract today on today's show, and I look forward to hearing back from you right after this break.
Propelio TV is sponsored by Noble Mortgage and Investments, Batch Skip Tracing, Think Multifamily, CreativeCashflow.com, and Assignor.
All right, everybody, so here we are. And the assignment contract I consider to be a very valuable piece of paperwork for you to have in your business. I consider it like an asset. The more experienced you are in this business, the more and more you realize that there are things that you need in that contract that you may not know up front. I'm going to tell you a real quick story of a situation that a person that I met here in DFW ran into here 4 or 5 months ago. She pulled down a property and she was going to make around $12,000 on the assignment on that property. And she had a pretty good deal. I was looking to buy it. And the reason I got brought into the situation is she called me up and she said, hey, I've got a property that I'm looking to assign. Would you like to buy it? And I'd look at the numbers and I'm like, everything on the numbers say, yeah, I haven't seen the property yet, but I'd be interested in purchasing it. She's like, okay, well, here's the deal. I've already assigned the contract to somebody else. And right then and there, I have to start hitting the brakes on it because, I don't have the rights to go in and circumvent somebody else's deal. And I'm like, hold on, what's going on here? What do you mean you've assigned this to somebody else? And she's like, yeah, I signed it like 2.5 weeks ago, and they told me that they had to use their title company, so we took it to their title company. Their title company's not responding to me. They're not answering my questions. The buyer's supposed to close in 2 days, and they're not closing. And I was like, okay, well, if they don't close in 2 days, does the contract go back to you, or what's going on here? And she's like, no, my contract with the seller, I'm just going to use a number, it ends on the 17th. And the buyer still hasn't performed, and the buyer's saying, well, I'm going to wait till the 17th to close. When I originally talked to him, he said he was going to close in a week, and here it is almost 2-3 weeks later, and they still haven't closed yet, and they're going to wait till the 17th to close. I was like, man, that is a bad situation to be in. You can't assign it to me. You've already assigned it to somebody else, and your contract with the seller expires on the 17th, and your buyer hasn't performed, and you lost control of the deal by letting them take your title to a different company. You're in a bit of a bad situation. Let's look at that assignment contract. And the assignment contract she had gave all rights to the new buyer, to the assignee. Let's cover some real quick terminology real quick. Assignor and assignee. The way I remember that is, would you rather be an employer or an employee? I would much rather be the employer than the employee. So I look at it the same way on an assignment of contract. When you're looking at an assignor and an assignee, the assignor is the person in control. So look at that as the employer, and the assignee is the person that's getting the contract. So that's the employee. So that's how I remember assignor and assignee. But with her contract, she gave full rights to the assignee. They had rights to communicate with the seller, rights to do whatever, no control at all. All it was an agreement to sell the contract, and it didn't cover anything else. So fortunately for her, my involvement into the deal kind of put a fire underneath the buyer, and the buyer ended up finally closing. But everything written up into that point was something that happens often. And I hate saying this, but it does happen often. When we're talking about wholesaling, you're going to have unscrupulous buyers that are just doing bad things. If you assign your contract to a buyer that has no intentions of performing, they can circumvent your contract, burn your contract out. And what I mean by burn your contract out, if they know your contract closes on the 17th and they've got your assignment, and your assignment contract doesn't handle any of these types of things, they can just wait it out until your contract with the seller expires, then approach the seller and be like, hey, I know that you just fell out of contract, but let's go ahead and sign this back up, because you may not even have the right to go back and extend your contract with the seller depending on what your paperwork looks like. There's a lot of things to think about here. So those are some of the things we're going to discuss here in today's class. So I'm going to pop this up here for me to look through real quick. Some of the first things that your assignment of contract need is a definition of all parties. Now that sounds very simple, but I need to know who the assignor is. That's going to be me, company name, contact information, how to get in touch with me. It's going to need the assignee's name, company name, points of contacts, as well as your title company's names and points of contact. And then you may or may not need the seller's information on there. I would normally just put the seller's name. I would not put the seller's phone numbers and email, because we're going to discuss that here in just a second. I have a very clearly defined section in my assignment of contract that discloses communication between all parties, that I am assigning the contract to the end buyer, but I'm assigning the contract to the assignee. I need to make sure I'm using the right terms. The assignee, I'm assigning the contract to the assignee, but in my contract, it clearly states that the assignee has no rights to communicate with the seller at all, and that any communication with the seller is considered a default in contract, and the contract will immediately revert back to me, and any deposits left with me will be null and void. They stay mine. They're non-refundable. If you default on this contract, I keep the money. So I make it very, very, very clear in my assignment of contract that if you need to communicate with the seller, you speak with me, and all communication goes directly through me. And that puts a very, very big, just red no. You do not talk to the seller, because what you don't want to have happen is you assign this contract and then all of a sudden the seller starts trying to communicate with the, not the seller, excuse me, the assignee starts communicating with the seller and blow your deal up. You do not want that to happen. So I make sure that it's very clear, assignee cannot talk to seller, and that I have a clause within the contract that says that if they do, it is considered a default of contract, and all rights to contract revert back to me as the assignor, and assignee forfeits their deposit. Okay? That's a very big nugget for you. So that one's coming out there. Then we also need to talk about the non-refundable deposit after I kill this damn bug flying around me. The non-refundable deposit. With you being a new wholesaler, even an experienced wholesaler, if you have a new relationship building with your assignee may be extremely uncomfortable with handing over to you a non-refundable deposit. And I can understand that. You know, if I've never met you before and here we are standing out in front of a vacant house, do I know that you really have a contract with the seller? The seller's not there. It's an abandoned property. And that's something else that's gone on here in the real estate investing industry, is people pretending to have contracts and taking non-refundable deposits and running. You know, that's bad, but it happens. So I can understand why the assignee may be a little nervous about handing me a check. So if they're nervous about handing me a check, I personally require them to give the check to me. On very, very, very few occasions have I allowed them to take that check to the title company, because what you're going to find out is if they take it to the title company and we end up in a disagreement, the title company's not going to release the funds to me or them. They're going to hold those funds back in escrow until we come to a conclusion as to what happens. And normally it's going to be a knockdown, drag out fight, because I'm not giving up that money because they screwed up, and they're not wanting to give it to me because they backed out. Well, I want to keep that money. So the non-refundable deposit needs to be clearly defined within your contract. Who is it getting paid to? And under what rare circumstances would the non-refundable deposit be refundable? Okay, some of the things that may allow for that deposit to be refunded would be the seller's failure to close. Bad title, something wrong with title. Let's say you've got some things on Schedule C that are unable to be cleared. We've got something that pops up on the survey that was not disclosed up front. Those are issues where I would say that the assignee can walk away and get their money back. Things that I would not say that assignee could get their money back on. Failure to get funding. It's not my problem. I know it sucks, but it's not my problem. The assignee going behind my back and talking to the seller and blowing the deal up. Not my fault. I'm keeping your money. Other things that might be able to happen there is the assignee trying to get access to the property when they shouldn't have access to the property. And we'll talk more about that here in a second. But we need to have the non-refundable deposit clearly defined within the contract. Other things that I'm going to do with this assignment of contract is I'm going to set a close date. Now let me explain what I'm doing here and why. Most of my purchase agreements with a seller are going to be on a 30 business day close. If my seller negotiates something different than that, I'll gladly do it, but I always try to get 30 business days, which ends up being about 45 days in total. That's plenty enough time for me to get this property under contract and figure out what my exit strategy is going to be. I've already got that figured out most of the time by the time I'm assigning or I'm contracting it, but it gives me plenty of time to get my ducks in a row. Okay, now if I'm doing this, and I go out and I find an end buyer, or an assignee, this relates back to the story I told you at the beginning. I go out and I find an assignee that's interested in this property, and I assign my contract to them, and I do not give the assignee a clearly defined close date. Then my assignee could quite literally take the entire length of the contract to close. They have every right to do so because I did not set any close date prior to then in the assignment contract. What I typically do is give my assignee 10 days to close. If they need to negotiate something different up front, I might allow that. I might allow up to 2 weeks, but it's not often. I might force them to increase their non-refundable deposit a little bit in the event that they're asking for more time than that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, you know what? You've got 10 days, not business days. You've got 10 days to close this property. Most hard money lenders can get in and out of their due diligence within 7 days, and that incorporates a weekend into it. So that puts the fire underneath them to get in and get their stuff ball moving forward. Okay, so let's say I give them 10 business days, or not 10 business days, 10 days to close the contract. What happens if they don't close the contract within those 10 days? Okay, there's a few things. If I don't feel like the assignee is performing on any capacity, they're just dragging their feet, they don't really feel like they're making anything happen, I have full and total right with the way my assignment of contract is written to have that contract revert back to me as the contract holder, and they lose all rights to it, and that gives me the right to turn around and remarket and resell the contract. That is part of my contract. And the reason I do that is because if my buyer is not performing, my assignee is not performing, that's $20,000 that I'm hanging on the line. I want to control that. I don't want to sit there and stress about the $20,000 that I may or may not make. I've already earned it. I just haven't received it yet. And it's that buyer's job to get me paid. And if I don't feel like they're doing their job, they're going to get fired. Okay? I will keep their non-refundable deposit, and I will have the contract revert back to me to resell. Now let me give a little bit more depth into that. Now let's say I do feel like the buyer is trying to perform. I feel like the buyer is doing everything they can to get things done, and they're hitting a couple of roadblocks. Well, something else I also have in my assignment of contract is the right to extend the contract, my sole right, not the assignee's. The assignee has no right or demand available whatsoever, but in my sole discretion, I have the right to extend their close date. And I also put a per diem charge for every single day that goes forward without closing. And I can choose how much more time I give them. Let's say I give them an extra 3 days to close, and I charge them an extra $300 per day to close, and I want that up front. Give me $900, and I'll give you another 3 days. That puts a little bit more skin in the game for the buyer, shows me a little bit of initiative on their desire to close. And if they start arguing with me about that, it's like, no way I'm going to do that. I was like, are you going to close? Well, most certainly. And I was like, well, the $900 will be applied to your closing when you close. So you're not losing any money. Well, why do I have to give it to you? And I was like, well, if you're that concerned that you're not going to close, let's just go ahead and eliminate the contract right now. Because if you're telling me that you're worried about another $900, that's telling me you're worried that you might not close. And if you're worried that you're not going to close, I'm definitely worried you're not going to close. So I'll put a per diem charge in there to control that. Other things that I might do to try and maintain that relationship with the assignee and or end buyer. In the event that I don't feel like they're closing and or they've hit some hiccups that are causing problems, this draws me back to another story that we ran into. I was co-wholesaling a deal. Ryan and I were co-wholesaling a deal with a local investor, and we found a buyer that came to the table. And the buyer that came to the table was using a lender that I did not feel comfortable with. I've had a lot of bad issues with this lender in the past, and I just don't have a lot of respect for the lender. And the buyer was using that lender. And up front, I told that buyer, I was like, I would not use that lender. I have no faith in their ability to close, and I don't really have any faith in their ethics. All that to be said, if that's the lender you choose, be very aware that if you fail to close, that non-refundable deposit is, guess what? Non-refundable. I'm keeping it. And as the time moves forward, we're going into this, we're getting that 10-day mark, and guess what's happening? The lender is failing to close. And I'm feeling bad about this because the buyer is being real cool, man. The buyer is not being bad about this whatsoever. And for the simple fact that he was handling this in a very respectful manner, I handled the non-refundable deposit in a respectful manner. I told the man, I said, in the event that I'm able to find a new buyer in the time that we need to get this deal closed, and they get it closed, as long as I don't lose any money in this transaction, meaning that my new buyer comes in at the same price, don't have any other hiccups, and I am still able to make all the money that I planned on making, I will refund your money. Well, we did lose about $2,000 more, about $2,000 going to a new buyer. So I took $2,000 from their deposit and returned $3,000 to them. They put $5,000 down. I kept $2,000 of it, and I gave him the other $3,000 back. He was happy for that because I did not have to do it. I maintained that relationship and I continued moving forward. Those are some scenarios that you might want to think about and consider when you're going through and assigning these contracts. Let's take a look at some other things. Where else do we have? Some things that you definitely need in your assignment of contract is a clear definition of your position in the contract. You should never be marketing a property for sale. If you're assigning contracts, you are not marketing a property for sale. What are you marketing for sale? What are you marketing for sale? If you're not marketing a property for sale, then what is it that you are marketing? You are marketing your interest in the contract. You have a contract for sale. You don't have a house for sale. You can't sell a house you don't own. All you can sell is your equitable interest in the contract. So that's what gives you the right to sell these contracts. So I have a contract for sale, and I need to make sure that is very clearly defined in my assignment contract. I am not selling you 123 Main Street. I'm selling you a contract for 123 Main Street. So we need to make sure that that is defined. Here's another one. And if I'm going too fast, please slow me down here. Here's another one. I need to address access to the property. I know that my new buyer, my assignee, needs to go in there and start getting their scope of work figured out, start getting their contractor bids go, so that way they can move their progress along. If this is a vacant property, that's not that big of a deal. If this is an occupied property though, remember what must be done. That assignee needs to maintain all communications through me, the assignor, and I will schedule a time for the seller, the assignee, and myself all to come to the property to walk through and get this stuff going. Now, depending upon how my seller has been up until now, if they've been really amicable, easygoing, doesn't seem like they're going to cause much issues, I'll make that happen a few times. But in the event that I am dealing with a seller that's just been real difficult to deal with, real jumpy, real just pain in the butt, I'm not going to let that happen. I'm going to tell the new buyer, I'm like, hey, due diligence was supposed to have been done prior to contract, and I told you when you did execute on this contract that, hey, the seller is really timid, really jumpy, it's causing a lot of problems, your access to this property is going to be limited. I'll try and set the expectations up front. I try not to ever surprise somebody with things that are unknown, so I'll set that expectation up front, but I'm not going to let them in. So I need to make sure that in this contract that it's clearly defined that they're not supposed to be walking the property without me, they're not supposed to be contacting the seller unless they go through me, and these are the things that I need to make sure are addressed up front. Okay, where else are we at? Here's a good one. Here's a real good one for you. This one will save you some money. If you're an experienced wholesaler, this one may even save you some money. In the event that I am taking the earnest money deposit up front, and the the assignee, my end buyer, refuses to give me the non-refundable deposit, which I can respect at times. I'm not going to argue heavily on that, but with my experience in my past transactions, almost 100% of the deposits come straight to me. But let's say they do take it to the title company. If they are going to require it to go to the title company, I already have a copy of my title company's earnest money deposit release form. And I make the assignor, or not the assignor, the assignee, my end buyer, I make them sign up front a release of earnest money deposit to me. And that is just clearly, how do I say that? That simplifies my life tenfold. And the reason it simplifies my life tenfold is, let's say the buyer does fail to close and they are in breach of contract and they're not performing. Well, instead of me having to go in on the backside and start arguing between the end buyer, the title company, and any other involved party about where that money goes, I've already got it written into my release that they've signed that $5,000 comes back to me. So I've already got them to sign the release. That's something I would consider you doing as well. Now, we're going to move into this next segment and we're going to discuss some of the disclosures that you should have included in your assignment of contract. And I'm going to discuss them. There's probably about 15 of them that I would recommend that you have in there. And I'm going to discuss those right after this short commercial break.
The Propelio Academy, an all-in-one education resource for training in wholesales, subject to wraps, short sales, flips, rentals, BRRRR, property management, and more. Go to propelio.com/academy to get your scholarship today. Propelio.com. What does Propelio offer? Lead generating websites, access to true MLS comps, off-market lead lists, and deal alerts. Get them all today at propelio.com.
All right, everybody. If I seem like I'm running a little fast up here or I'm being a little short, I don't know if you can see this, but I got my crutch over here and I'm standing with all my weight on one leg, so it's making it a little difficult for me to concentrate. It's starting to hurt a little bit standing up here. But with that to be said, I was watching the commercial break come through and I saw the Academy pop up. And for those of you that do not know what the Academy is, it is not a upsell. It's not some big course for sale. The Academy is completely and totally free. For anybody that has ever wanted to learn more about real estate investing, for anybody that's wanted to go out there and change their lives, the Propelio Academy is out there. The Propelio Academy is free. If you're seeing the depth of knowledge that I'm dropping with you on this course right now today, on this video here today, the Academy is full of stuff like this. So take the time, go out there and check it out, propelio.com/academy, and gather as much of that information as you want. To give you some ideas of what's going to be in the Academy, take a look at what I've got here on my computer screen right now. If you look at this, if we go ahead and pop up onto my computer itself, this is the wholesale course that's coming out. I'm recording this week. So this is the mind map for that course. So we're starting out here at the very beginning. What is a wholesale? Do I have to be licensed? How much can I make? Believe in the process, defining your why, going through and establishing the reasons why you should be in this business. And then I go in and I start talking about data mining, because data mining is absolutely the core of this business. You need to understand and find good prospects. I go through here, I've got a list of 41 different motivations that you can market to. I talk about reverse prospecting. I talk about list stacking. I talk about co-wholesales. I then move into marketing. Marketing is the lifeblood of this business. If you're not marketing, you're not doing deals. But I go through in there, I discuss, because so many people talk about, I don't want to put any money into this. Well, that money you're putting into marketing is your investment. Talk about advertising options, lead management, the follow-up and follow-up systems, phone systems, ringless voicemails, emails, text messages, band signs, bulk mail, skip traces, call reel. If you don't know how to set up bulk mail, I'll teach you how to set up bulk mail. Pay-per-click, network marketing, avoiding gaps in income, and becoming the master lead generator. I go through taking the call. I go through acquisitions. Look at this acquisition set. There's a lot of stuff going on in here. I go through negotiations. I go through marketing. I go through determining your rehab budgets. And this is free. I'm not charging anybody for this. This is getting recorded next week, and we're releasing this. I go through file management. I go through dispositions. I go through building a buyer's list, go through marketing the property for sale, showings, qualifying your new buyer, contracting the buyer, taking the deal down yourself, working with hard money lenders, hedge funds, realtors, co-wholesales, the assignment contract. I break down the assignment contract just like I'm doing for you right now. I break down the double close contract for you. I go through closing with you. I show you exactly what you should be doing to go through closing. I go through virtual wholesales. I go through establishing a business. All of that is in the Academy. We're going to start recording this course, this specific course, this week. And my goal is to have this course out and available to you within the next week and a half. So if you are really digging in on wholesales and you want to learn more, go sign up for the Propelio Academy right now. And this is free. It's not an upsell. I know that is completely and totally mind-blowing for most of y'all. You cannot imagine how many messages I get for people like, how much does it cost? I'm like, it's free. And then they're like, no, you're lying. How much does it cost? It's free. It's straight up free. And for those that don't know my background, that don't know my history, don't know my story, I've talked about it on a couple of occasions, and I'm not going to talk about it right here, right now. But my goal is to give back to each and every one of y'all that have hit the struggle, that know what life is like, to go on a, not even a paycheck to paycheck basis, not even being able to survive. My goal is to help every single one of y'all out of it. And if I can give this information to you, information that has changed my life, I'm going to. And so that's what we've got right here. I'm going to hit y'all up and finish up with this particular topic, though. I'm going to pull this one back up. So let's talk about some of the disclosures and agreements that you need. I'm going to pull this up real quick. These are some of the disclosures and stuff that I keep in mind, and as is acknowledgement. I want to make sure that the assignee in buyer has no unwritten expectations of the property condition. I make sure that they get a seller's disclosure from me. I have a seller's disclosure signed from the seller. I pass that on. But I need to make sure that that end buyer is very much aware that they're purchasing this property as is, that no repairs will be made unless they are written. So you can see through here, this is pretty extensive. It's written but not limited to roof, plumbing, electrical, appliances, sewers, soil conditions, foundation, heating and air conditioning, structural and pool related equipment, if applicable. It gets in there, it gets pretty deep. Other things that I'm looking for. We've got the down payment closed in here. We talk about the cash sale. There's no contingency for financing. This property is going to be sold. There is no contingencies on financing. Closing cost reimbursements, we don't have that one here. That's a double close one. Additional disclosures and acknowledgments, inspection report, and subject property conditions. I need to make sure that the end buyer discloses and agrees that they are aware of all of this. Real estate brokerage disclosures, they're disclosed, they need to make sure that they're not getting paid any commissions, and I'm not getting paid any commissions. I'm not acting as a real estate agent on their behalf, and they're not acting as a real estate agent on my behalf. Marketable title acknowledgement. At the time of this agreement, seller owns a contract for sale and purchase of the subject property. Buyer acknowledges that seller currently does not own title to subject property. This sale is contingent upon seller obtaining marketable title to subject property under seller's purchase contract. If seller is unable to obtain marketable title to subject property, then seller shall return buyer's down payment, and this agreement is void with no further obligations between parties. Remember, we talked about that earlier. Property, access, limitation, and utilities. Seller and affiliated associates make no authorization to buyer to enter onto subject property prior to closing. Buyer holds seller and affiliated associates harmless from liability arising from buyer entering onto subject property. Buyer at no time and for no reason is to enter subject property without a licensed real estate agent of brokerage and or myself. This is a different contract than mine. Utilities will not be turned on by seller assignor at any time. Does that make sense? Lead-based paint disclosures. We have the right to extend closing at our sole discretion. Buyer, this is a good one right here. Buyer assignee has completed all physical inspections of the property and agrees to waive any contingencies for inspections. It's a good one. Let's keep looking. Remember I was talking earlier about a per diem charge? Although buyer acknowledges that a failure to close will result in earnest money deposit to be obtained by seller as liquidated damages, if seller grants buyer additional time to close beyond the closing date mutually agreed upon in contract, there will be a blank per diem fee payable to seller and charger to buyer paid at closing. So I give them the option to extend. On my personal contract, I don't get it paid at closing. I have them pay it to me right there at the extension. All right. Homeowners associations, property owners associations, all of that is handled right here. Seller or assigner reserves all existing mineral rights. I don't typically do this anymore, but this was a very common practice around here. Here in Texas, especially where we're at right here, we sit on top of the Barnett Shale, where they're mining for a lot of natural gas. And one thing that was creative that allowed us to create cash flow off of assignments of contracts that we've executed in the past is when we execute the assignment, we retain the mineral rights. Well, if I own the mineral rights to hundreds of properties around DFW, and these are being solicited by oil and gasmen coming in to rent or lease those rights from me, and let's say I'm able to get $100 per property times 100 properties, well, that's $10,000 a month I'm making in passive income just off of my assignment. So if you are watching this right now and you're in an area that has any oil and gas leasing going on, and or let's say you don't, and you just want to protect your rights of that into the future, because maybe 10 years from now they find a huge pocket of gas underneath your assigned property. Well, if you retain the mineral rights, which you can do, retain the mineral rights in that assignment, well, now they are coming to you to rent the oil and gas rights versus going to someone else. So that's a way to create cash flow off of some of your assignments if you're in an area with a bunch of oil and gas. Keep going. Fannie Mae properties, I'm going to skip that one. So that's not necessarily skip, but Fannie Mae, for those of you that don't know, if you are out there and you're flipping properties, this is a disclosure if I'm going to assign this over to a flipper. I don't need to, but I'm going to let that seller know that, hey, if you're trying to flip this property, just know that you might not be able to resell the property up to 90 days if it's a Fannie, HUD, or a government contract. Not government contract, government lender. I'm not going to get into details on it. You can read it on the screen. Recording of deeds, this is for a double close. That's not as important. This one right here, service providers. Any contact information given to buyer, assignee by seller, assignor for any outside service providers, including but not limited to contractors, handymen, subcontractors, mortgage brokers, tradesmen, realtors, title agents, and attorneys, shall not be construed or taken as an endorsement or recommendation by seller, assignee of the quality or type of service that you will receive. Any service providers given to buyer, assignee are done so strictly as a tool to give buyer, assignee some immediate options. All service providers need to be researched and chosen independently by the buyer assignee. Why would I put something like that in there? Why? Well, it's not uncommon for me whenever I'm trying to assign a contract to go ahead up front and get a foundation repair bid. In Texas, we have a lot of foundation problems. We've got basically two types of foundation in Texas. Ones that have foundation problems and ones that will have foundation problems. So with that being said, most of the properties that we're going to assign in Texas will have some level of foundation issues. So I will preemptively go ahead and get a foundation bid for the property, and I'll market the property with the foundation bid so people can get an idea of what the repairs will cost. Well, what I don't want to do is have this person try and come back and sue me later saying that I owe them money because something didn't work out with that foundation repair company. Not my problem. You know, I'm upset that you had a problem with them. I would not be marketing them with this property if I didn't think they were a good company. But your problem with that company is your problem with that company. It has nothing to do with me. So that's why that disclosure is in there. Here's another one. Ability to understand. This is funny, absolutely funny, but it's in there, and I know why it's in there, and I've seen it in a lot of contracts. Buyers are not under the influence of alcohol, drugs, or any other ailment at this time that would affect buyers' ability to read this document and make an intelligent decision as to the consequences of signing it. It sounds ridiculous that you would have to put something like that in an assignment of contract or any contract. I see this in a lot of contracts. A lot of my purchase agreements have this kind of language in there. Why is that in there? Because at some point in time, a buyer has gone to a judge and said, hey, I was drunk at the time and I had no clue what I was doing. So I want that person to pay for me being drunk. You know, and somebody won. And that's just the fact to it. So that's why we have these kinds of disclosures in here now. The next one is English is the buyer's native language, and buyer does have the ability to read and understand the contract. If buyer is uncertain about the meaning and effect of this contract, then buyer should consult an attorney. Boom, I hit the entire agreement, move on forward, and then I get it ready to sign. So those are a lot of the disclosures that I'll have in all of my paperwork, and I consider that to be extremely important. So I've kind of disclosed and went through everything that I keep in my assignment of contract. For those of you that are not aware, Propelio is starting up another branch called Propelio Legal, and Propelio Legal is going to start generating and providing all of these documents for you: assignments of contracts, purchase agreements, LLC paperwork, JV agreements. Go through and set up all of your paperwork for you. We're kind of trying to set up kind of like a legal Zoom for real estate investors, but have a much more in-depth process surrounding it. All of your partnership contracts, your affiliate agreements, everything you can possibly think of as a real estate investor. We're going to start trying to get all these documents curated for you, and so that way you have these documents available. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, drop some comments below. If you like what you've seen so far, drop some comments below. If you'd like me to talk about some of these other things that we have up here on the screen, drop some questions. This is live, so feel free to ask as many questions as you'd like to. I think that pretty much covers everything that I was wanting in the assignment of contract. I went through it kind of fast, but if you'd like me to slow down, if you got some questions, I'm here and available. While y'all are talking about that, I'm going to take some time to say hi to my daughters. Hi Tyler, hi Zyla, hey babe, my wife Miranda. Thank all of y'all for watching. Thank y'all for being there for me. Thank y'all for keeping me alive, keeping me moving forward. Thank y'all so much for that. And then I guess I'll just break down and slow down and just open this up here and let y'all take a look at it and see what's going on.
Jason watching live from Kuwait.
Jason watching live from Kuwait. Wow. Wow. What time is it over there right now? I'd have to imagine it's what, probably early morning? Wow. Good job, Jason. So, any other few further questions or anything, thoughts? If not, I'm going to go ahead and move on. I've got up here acquisitions, taking the call, file management, dispositions, closing, virtual wholesales. Anything else I could talk about for about 10 minutes before I call this an end of the day? Let me see here. Acquisitions, dispositions, building a buyer's list, showings, qualifying the buyer. Let's talk about qualifying the buyer for just a second. That's pretty simple. That's easy to do. Your goal when you get this contract should be to move it. I mean, perform on the contract. That's what you're trying to do. Let's think this through for a second. If I'm trying to perform on this contract and get something done, where are some of the places that I can immediately go to find some buyers? Let's say I'm a brand new wholesaler. I don't have a solid buyers list ready. I don't have any of that going on. Let me give you a couple of hints of people that you can reach out to really quickly move your deals at full face value. Hard money lenders. You know, if I search DFW hard money lender, I could probably find 30 of them real fast. Real fast. There's hundreds of them around here, but I could find 30 solid ones real fast. I guarantee you, how does a hard money lender make money? How does a hard money lender make money? They make money lending money. That's how they do it. Hard money lenders work with people that perform all the time. Hard money lenders close on contracts all the time. They know who the buyers out there are that are closing. Well, if I call up a hard money lender and I say, hey, here's a property that I got that I'm trying to move. Do you have anybody in your network that would be interested in this type of property? Boom, that hard money lender will really quickly do their own due diligence on it because they're used to underwriting property. They'll underwrite it real quick and say, yeah, I know that James Nobody has bought properties in your area before and I've loaned them money. That hard money lender will then call James up and be like, hey, I've got a property sitting here on my desk that you might want. Are you on the market to buy? James says yes. Hard money lender connects you and James. And guess what hard money lender just did? They just got paid because they loaned James the money. Well, let's say hard money lender number 1 says no. Call hard money lender 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 to 30. And if you get through 30 hard money lenders and they're all telling you no, your underwriting was probably wrong. Something's wrong, and each one of those no's that you get should be followed up with a question of, what do you think is wrong with this property? And they'll tell you. Some of them might be an asshole about it. Some of them might be really chill with you about it. But go through and say, okay, what did I do wrong with this property? And if they go through and they tell you, you talk to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of them, and they're all like, your ARV's wrong, your repair budget's wrong, you know, X, Y, and Z is wrong. Well, that gives you the opportunity to go back to the seller as fast as you possibly can and say, hey, okay, I hate to do this, but this is what's going on. Remember how I had an inspection period on my contract with you and I needed to get some due diligence done? Well, my due diligence shows that X, Y, and Z is a problem. Could there be an option for us to renegotiate the purchase price from $76,000 down to $69,000? And if you're willing to do that, I can get it closed here and fast. If the seller does, great. If the seller does not, you're gonna have to cancel the contract. You know, hard money lender, good resource for you. Outside of hard money lenders are typically selling to people that are landlords trying to do cash out refis, or they're selling to rehabbers trying to create long-term cash flow. Not rehabbers trying to create long-term cash flow. Rehabbers trying to create real quick flips. Who else could you possibly get in touch with that'd be willing to pay more for that property than people in that hard money lenders network? Hedge funds. You need to get very active about finding out who the hedge funds in your area are, find out if they're buying in your area, find out if there's like an Open Door or a Zillow or a, what's that other, there's another big iBuyer out now. You've got Open Door and you've got Zillow all playing in, and I can't think of the third one. There's another one, OfferPad or something like that. But they're all buying at ridiculous prices. They're buying at like 90 to 92 cents on the dollar, all in. Well, if you can find out who those are and you can find out a way of creating relationships with them where you might be able to move properties to them, and or find the hedge funds in your areas that are actively purchasing properties at ridiculous prices, then go find those people and say, hey, I've got this property under contract. Would you be interested in buying it? What terms are you requiring to purchase properties like these? The better your network of buyers is, the better your opportunity to maximize every deal you get will be. As you get more and more advanced into wholesaling, you're going to quickly find that your best buyer is not going to be that remodeler. Your best buyer is not going to be that landlord. Your best buyers are going to be the institutional funds, the people that are coming to the table purchasing to get 3, 4, 5% returns on their money, not trying to go out there and create 12 to 20% returns on their money. So finding those hedge funds and finding those iBuyers that are willing to work with you are going to be good opportunities for you to maximize every contract you get. All right, so we got a couple of people coming in here. So Jason's in Kuwait, and it's 7:40 p.m. over there. That's awesome. So we've got some Q&As coming in. I've got quite a few of them up here, actually. So I'm going to go ahead and move into the Q&As right after this next break. Stick around. The breaks are like 30, 45 seconds long. Go to the bathroom, grab a drink, come back, and I'll answer any question you got while I'm here. Man, I'm nervous.
The Propelio Academy, an all-in-one education resource for training in wholesales, subject to wraps, short sales, flips, rentals, BRRRR, property management, and more. Go to propelio.com/academy to get your scholarship today. Propelio.com. What does Propelio offer? Lead generating websites, access to true MLS comps, off-market lead lists, and deal alerts. Get them all today at Propelio.com.
All right, everybody. So we're going to drop into some Q&As. I see a lot of them showing up here on the screen already. So I'm going to go ahead and start going through these one at a time. Let's see what we got here. I got one from Clifford. Where do you get the release form from for the deposit? So here in Texas, the Texas Association of Realtors has theirs, but if you're not a realtor, you're not allowed to use it. If you talk to your title company will likely have a release form that you can use. Just call up your escrow officer, your title attorney, whoever you might be working with, and say, hey, can I get a copy of your EMD release? Some people call it good faith deposit. Texas is called earnest money deposit. So depending on your state, figure out what that is, but you should be able to get that from them. Got another question here from Matt. How much earnest money deposit do you take? Up front, I used to do about $3,000 on the low side to the high side of about 10 grand as my non-refundable deposit up front. And that really depended upon the cost of the deal as well as the amount of the assignment that I was going to be making. You know, if it was kind of a thin deal and it was a lower price point, I'd do about a $3,000 non-refundable. If it was an average deal, about 5 grand. If it was a really good deal and there was a higher price point, like a $500,000 property or a $700,000 property, I'd put a $10,000 non-refundable up there, because whoever that end buyer is, if they can't come up with $10,000 liquid fast to drop it on me, I'm gonna have concerns about their ability to close on a $700,000 property, because they're gonna need funds to close at escrow. And if they don't have 10 grand up front to drop on me, I might be a little nervous about that. Other things I could do to qualify that buyer, because I was talking about that a second ago, is say, give me a list of your HUDs. You know, show me your HUDs. So many people are scared to show HUDs because they don't have any. Well, if you've got an end buyer that is, working with you, you're going to have to make a decision. Is this their first property? If it is, you don't have to say no to them. You may have to coach them through it and help them along, but you also need to realize that that end buyer, may not perform for you. But one of the things you can do is, like, if it's a $700,000 property, be like, show me your HUDs. Show me what you got going on. Because if I'm about to make $30,000 assignment here, and this is a $700,000 purchase, this isn't a newbie game. This isn't a new property for you. Show me some HUDs. Okay, Lynette, is there a place you have your assignment contract or that we can access? I do not have a place right now, but I'm working through right now with my attorneys, going through all of my paperwork and cleaning everything up to make sure that it's going to function for everybody else. And we're working through those details right now. So as of right now, Lynette, no. But I'd say probably in the next 60 to 90 days, you'll start seeing a lot of my paperwork available to you. Going through, Bara, how do you retain if you don't own the property? I'm not sure what they mean. How do you retain if you don't own the property? If you could clarify that for me, I'll get that answered for you. I'm going to try my best to understand what the question's retaining to. But how do I retain? How do I retain the contract? So let's talk about, I'm going to go through two things that I think you might be talking about. I own the purchase contract. I've got it executed between me and the seller. It's my purchase contract. I will assign that to an assignee, and in the event that that assignee fails to close, I will then, in my own paperwork, say that if they fail to close on a specific date, I have the right to revert the, how do I say that? I have the right to nullify the assignment contract, and all rights to the contract come back to me. So that is one thing that I'll do to retain my control. The earnest money deposit. So I will have an earnest money deposit on file with the seller, and then I'll have what I'm going to call a non-refundable deposit on file with the assignee. So the assignee's money comes to me, my earnest money deposit goes to the seller or to the title company. I would have full and total rights to that money that assignee was supposed to pay me or did pay me in the event that they default. So that's my thoughts on that one. I've got another one here from Juan. Can we get a copy of this contract? Several people jumped in on an agreement. Yes, you can get a copy of this contract. No, you cannot get a copy of this contract today. I need to get my legal to review it. That's why I didn't throw it up here on the screen. I need to get my legal to review it, make sure that everything's good for them, because I don't want to give you something that may not work for you. So as soon as my attorneys come back and say good to go, I'll give you a copy of it. Got another one here from Matt Smith. What do you do differently in a sub-2 contract? Everything. Everything. With sub-2 contracts, you can assign subject-to contracts. I'm not a fan of it. Do I believe that you can? Yes. Do I believe that assigning contracts requires a significant more disclosure, a significant level of additional understandings? Yes. There are some companies out there that make their entire business assigning subject-to contracts, but they're not really doing it in the terms of a traditional wholesaler. They're doing it more so in the terms of being a professional owner finance company. Like there's a company here, local Happy House Buyers. What they do is they contract with a seller and they find a owner-occupied end buyer and they assign the contract between the two, keep the down payment as their fee, and they put into the assignment of contract a management fee that stays on top every single month. And the management fee is the difference between the seller's sales price and the buyer's end price, which is kind of the arbitrage between the two. And they collect that as a management fee for the process. Is that simple? No. Am I here to teach that to you today? No. That's definitely some advanced stuff, but I'm not really a fan of assigning them whatsoever. I'd much rather turn around, purchase it on a subject to, and sell it on a wrap. That's my preferred method. I'd rather not assign. Okay? Going through Kristen Gerst. Buyers can always get earnest money back in Texas at least. I do not take earnest money. I take a large option, as option money is never refundable. So that's Kristen Gerst's opinion on how that all works. I call them non-refundable deposits. I don't even call them option money. I personally would not like to consider option money on my assignment contract, because if I do option money underneath the Texas Real Estate Commission's contract, that gives them the right to back out. I don't give them any rights to back out. Kristen may have a different contract than the one I use. I use what I call a non-refundable deposit, and it's handled in an addendum. Okay? Clifford. What are good hedge fund companies to reach out to? As of right now, like you've got Memphis Invest. They do a lot of purchases of low-income houses. You've got Blackwater. I think it's Blackwater. It's been a long time since I've done anything with a hedge fund, like close to 4.5, 5 years. Memphis Invest is a big, strong one, though. And I can't even think. I'm not even going to try and pretend right now. I'm not going to sit there and lie to you. Willie Delinco. Buyer agreed to take property as is with tenants. Buyer agreed to take property as is with tenants. Now, before he gives me the deposit check, he wants to talk to the tenants. Would you allow this to happen? I could understand why any end buyer would be nervous about dealing with tenants in place. So I would likely allow that to happen with me there. So that way I can kind of hear what's being said and I don't get blindsided by some conversations that happened that I wasn't aware of. So I would probably let the end buyer do that. I mean, the end buyer is purchasing, and that is a huge risk for the end buyer. So I most definitely would want that buyer to be comfortable with the tenants in place. Got a question here from Matt Smith. How's the Driving for Dollar app and National Leads and Comps going? Okay, for those of you that have not been following Propelio, Propelio has been a regional company for the most of its life. Like, we've been around for about 4 years now, 5 years now, and we've only been live on the market for about 2.5, 3 years. Of that time, we've been a regional company. Well, we now have national comps. So if you ever needed comps from Propelio and you went in there and you didn't have access to comps, we now have national comps available to you. We offer that on a 7-day free trial. If you want a 30-day free trial, go ahead and mention this video right now. And when you go to propelio.com and start your trial, just send in a message to support and say, Daniel said on his live video today that I can have a 30-day free trial of the product. Well, if you need national comps, you can go to Propelio right now and get it. Lead lists are coming up over the next probably week and a half. We had them ready for release last week. We found some bugs that we couldn't release on. So if you need national lead lists, if you need direct access to some of the best lead lists available on a national scale, go to propelio.com. Just remember, on your 30-day trial, it might be a week or two before they're available to you. Now, don't forget, we do have a beta Driving for Dollars app. The beta Driving for Dollars apps is going to be revolutionary when it comes to driving for dollars. We are doing things that other companies have never done, and they really can't do as of right now. So check out the beta Driving for Dollars app. It is in beta, but it will do skip tracing. It will do direct mail. It will trace your lines over your drive so you can know where you've been and what you've done. But one of the key things that we're going to be able to do with that app that no one else is doing is A, you're going to be able to run comps on your properties from your beta Driving for Dollars app phone. You will, in addition to that, be able to stack data over your lists. Not over your lists, but over your drive. If I'm driving down the road and there's a really pretty house, is there any indication that that's a motivated seller if I'm driving for dollars? No. It's a brand new home. There's nothing wrong with it. Well, if I give you the ability to stack lists on top of that, such as pre-foreclosures, probates, tax delinquencies, high equity, low equity, no equity, reverse mortgages, option deeds, divorces. If I give you the ability to start saying, you know what, show me all those properties on it, imagine what your driving for dollars experience would be like when you see all of these properties around you that you would have never known were tax delinquent or a quick claim deed or something like that. That's what Propelio's Driving for Dollars app is going to do for you. Keep an eye out for all of that. Go out and try out the 30-day trial. It's available to you right now. Just make sure that when you sign up, you only get 7 days unless you message support and say, Daniel said on the assignment of contract video today that I can have a 30-day trial. So make sure you go out there and check that out. So go ahead, if you would. If you enjoyed the content you saw today, go to YouTube and subscribe, hit the notifications bell, drop some comments below. What that does is tell YouTube that you're enjoying the content. It really does help us out with the social algorithms. If you're watching on Facebook, go ahead and like us there, drop some comments there. But if you are on Facebook, I truly recommend that you start going over to YouTube, because with YouTube, you're going to be notified when content just like this gets out. Facebook kind of does, kind of doesn't really notify you. So take the time, go to YouTube. It's propelio.tv. Check it all out. And thank you all for watching, and I guess that's the end of the show. Have a good day.
Propelio TV is sponsored by Noble Mortgage and Investments, Batch Skip Tracing, Think Multifamily, CreativeCashflow.com, and Lifener.
Thank you, everybody, for showing up to the Propelio event. We had a great time. It's huge, as always. We love everybody that came. If this is your first event, jump on Facebook, jump on YouTube. Let us hear it. Let us know what your thoughts are. We love feedback. Anytime we could do something better, we want to do that. If this is your second event, your third event, your 10th event, let us hear that too. We're trying to create a community here where everybody comes together. So thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you at the next one.